Sergio, what has gender got to do with combating desertification?
Well, it has everything to do with desertification, land degradation, and drought. For example, in the African drylands, if you go to any country that has a substantive amount of drylands, you will find there is some sort of feminization process. Due to migration, due to lack of opportunities in the drylands. Men migrate 15 to 45 or even 55, and women are left behind. This is one aspect. The other aspect is that women are, and girls especially, are the ones that go and fetch the water. And women are the caretakers of the household and also the producers of the land.
Where do the men go?
Men go to the nearest city, to the nearest country, and sometimes to the nearest continent. So the impacts of land degradation in drylands is a global impact, just by looking at this angle. But there are other angles as well that make this problem a global problem.
And if we take an area such as the Horn of Africa, which has got desertification issues, what are the problems surrounding the education of women in those areas?
Well, in African drylands and drylands in general, population these populations are more vulnerable to the impacts of land degradation and drought impacts as well. And also they are more vulnerable because they are the less recipients, the recipients that receive less of the benefits of the government. When you are the distance between your community and the capital city is greater, as greater it is, as low it is the amount of financing, funding, and support that you receive, and incentives that you receive from the capital government. So this is the paradox that developing countries have. Drylands, dryland communities in rural areas that also cause more vulnerability when governments and central governments do not attend these communities.
Sure, and how expensive does it have to be to ensure that women receive appropriate education to look after these desertified areas?
Well, first, you have that in these drylands, communities in general, men and women, do not receive the proper amount of incentives and resources. And then you have that traditionally the legal and policy and cultural evolution over, historically, has put women aside. So women receive even less than men. In many countries, you have that women cannot access to some sort of property. So the property rights issue is at the center of the solution, but it's at the center of the problem, and it's also the center of the solution. This is one area, but also the area of, you mentioned education and health, access to work, access to the market, access to the information of the market. These are non-existent for women in many countries of the world.
How coordinated is the response from the UN? Because I've spoken to many representatives from the UN today, the UNDP, UNEP, UNFCCC, and they're all dealing with the same issue. How coordinated is the issue from the United Nations perspective, but also from the wealth of other organizations who are focusing on this issue?
Well, I hope that tomorrow is more coordinated than today. One thing I observe working in the UN is that there are many segmented approaches, all focusing on the same direction. The direction is not the problem. The problem is the coordination, the harmonization of the policies and measures and actions that we undertake. One way of minimizing these overlaps or vacuums that are created is through an information exchange and more networking. But now things are changing in the UN. We have UN Women, for example, which is a system-wide coordination forum. It is an agency, but also a forum, in which we all have to report and say to UN Women, to this organization, what is it that we are doing. So UN Women can actually orient and direct and coordinate action related to women. But this is not This is necessary, but it's not sufficient. In the case of the UNCC Secretariat, it is important that drylands, which is the focus, the leitmotif of this convention, continue being addressed with the gender perspective as they deserve.
Is there a danger that by focusing on the gender perspective and by focusing on education of women in some of these communities you've talked about, do you exclude the men? Do you exclude the young boys growing up?
No, of course, gender doesn't mean women. It is not, gender is not equal to women. As I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned to you, but I am an anomaly in the sense that when they say, are you the focal point of the UNCCD on gender? Yes, I am. And people get a little bit surprised because usually you have a gender focal point, which is a woman. But in my case, I would consider myself an anomaly in that sense. But when we talk about gender consideration, we are talking about equal footing for men and women. At this moment, however, women are at disadvantage, even in the rural area. And that's what we have to, if we want to address sustainable development, we have to target those segments of the population, women and girls especially.